This is a picture of guitarist Dave Mustaine back when he was in Metallica, who today we all know as the most commercially successful metal band of all time. But just before the group was scheduled to enter the studio to record their debut album, Mustaine was unceremoniously fired from the band. And while Mustaine isn't the first musician to be kicked out of a band just before they made it big, he may certainly be the most bitter.
It's been hard to watch everything that you guys do and you touch turn to gold, and everything I do backfire.
The bad blood between Mustaine and his bandmates had been brewing for quite some time. On one occasion, a brawl erupted between him and Metallica frontman James Hetfield when Mustaine's dog jumped onto the car of then Metallica bassist Ron McGovney and scratched the paint. Hetfield allegedly yelled at Mustaine's dog and kicked it in a fit of rage, which provoked Mustaine into physically attacking Hetfield, even punching him in the face.
And I beat James up because he kicked my dog.
This led to the band briefly firing Mustaine before taking him back shortly after, but things only got worse from there. In the days and weeks that followed, Mustaine's misuse of alcohol and other substances escalated to the point where the guitarist was constantly having violent outbursts. His erratic behavior would eventually compel his bandmates to decide that it was time to let him go. And so, as the members of Metallica traveled to Rochester, New York to record their debut album, Mustaine was awoken from a night of heavy drinking with the news of his dismissal. The hungover guitarist was then dumped at a bus station with a one-way ticket back to Los Angeles.
I had nothing, then I had everything, then I had nothing again.
Driven by revenge, Mustaine went on to form a rival band, Megadeth, which, to his credit, have sold more than 50 million albums worldwide. But even to this day, Metallica fans continue to remind Mustaine of his firing, often shouting the name of his previous band whenever they encounter him in public.
You know, I walk down the street and I hear some piece of say Metallica at me, and they do that to taunt me.
This brings to mind ex-Iron Maiden vocalist Paul Di'Anno, who once infamously confronted a heckler chanting the name of the man who replaced him, Bruce Dickinson.
If you like Bruce Dickinson, go home! Listen to his records! I'll kick your ass!
Di'Anno joined Iron Maiden in 1978, appearing on their first two studio albums. However, the singer grew increasingly detached and undependable, particularly due to his drug usage. By his own admission, Di'Anno was using cocaine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with the band's unending touring schedule taking an additional toll on his physical and mental health. Only making matters worse was the fact that Maiden's founding bassist, Steve Harris, maintained strict creative control of the band, prohibiting Di'Anno from being as involved with Maiden's songwriting as he would have liked. As Di'Anno's struggles with drugs and alcohol intensified, his performance abilities rapidly declined. This unfortunate situation ultimately led to the cancellation of multiple Iron Maiden shows. With no other option, the band made the difficult decision to part ways with the singer after the Killer World Tour came to an end. Di'Anno was replaced by Bruce Dickinson, who helped the band reach newfound levels of commercial popularity and still fronts the band today. Adding insult to injury is the fact that Di'Anno does not receive royalty payments for any Iron Maiden songs he appears on, as he was paid out by the band at the time of his departure, unaware of the massive success that Maiden would eventually achieve. But nothing compares to the humiliating firing of drummer Pete Best, who would have the misfortune of getting kicked out of one of the most influential bands of all time, the Beatles. And if you've never heard of this story before, then it's time you check out the sponsor of today's video, Opera. Opera is a cutting-edge web browser that not only keeps you safe while you're online through its free VPNs and ad blockers, but also has a built-in AI called Aria. So if you wanted to learn more about your favorite band, you could simply ask Aria. Just look at how quickly Aria recounts the entire history of rock music. Want to listen to some of the bands we've we've discussed today, the Opera browser makes it easier than ever with its built-in music player, meaning that you don't have to tediously switch back and forth between apps just to listen to your favorite songs. You can even relive your most unforgettable concerts by using Opera's video pop-up feature, which lets you watch videos while you continue browsing or working at the same time. Opera is faster, safer, and smarter than default browsers. So click the link in the description now to download Opera One absolutely free. Thanks again to Opera for sponsoring this video. Now, Pete Best's tenure in the Beatles was seemingly doomed from the start, with Best being the only band member refusing to adopt their signature haircut. Band management would later single Best out for his weak drumming skills, and when Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison learned that their producer wanted to replace Best with a session musician for their next record, they decided it was time to let him go. The Beatles, however, would let band manager Brian Epstein do their dirty work for them, and tasked him with breaking the news to Best, with Epstein firing the drummer on August 16, 1962. Watching his former bandmates go on to achieve worldwide fame with their new drummer Ringo Starr, Best would tragically attempt to end it all at the height of Beatlemania. Fortunately, he would emerge unharmed, and continue to pursue his musical aspirations in a number of bands that, sadly, never amounted to much, leaving Best to give up on the music industry altogether. And while these days, Best is often remembered as the fabled fifth Beatle, virtually everyone has forgotten original AC/DC vocalist Dave Evans. The singer joined the group in 1973, back when they were originally a glam rock band. With Evans on vocals, AC/DC quickly developed a reputation as a must-see live band in their local scene. However, their manager Michael Browning always had a nagging feeling that Evans just wasn't the right fit for the group. The singer was eventually let go in 1974, with Evans asserting that his firing stemmed from a bar fight with Browning. He has also expressed his frustration toward his ex-bandmates for completely ignoring his contributions to the group, claiming that AC/DC would not exist without him. The band, however, has stated that his dismissal was simply a result of their shift from glam rock to a different kind of sound, which is exactly what happened to founding Pantera member Terry Glaze. Originally joining the band as a rhythm guitarist, Glaze was later promoted to lead vocalist following the departure of original singer Donny Hart. During the mid-1980s, the Glaze-fronted Pantera released several albums that, unfortunately, failed to achieve any measure of success. These albums showcased a glam metal sound, drawing inspiration from bands like Kiss and Van Halen. However, the group's third album, I Am the Night, saw Pantera move in a heavier direction, finally helping them gain the attention of the press. The band's music would only continue to get heavier, and by 1986, it was clear that Glaze's glam approach did not fit with the band's developing style, and the singer was sacked. Pantera would go on to recruit frontman Phil Anselmo, secure a record deal, and pioneer the groove metal genre with the release of their 1990 breakthrough album, Cowboys from Hell, leaving Glaze as a seldom remembered footnote in the group's history. Despite this, Glaze has continued to participate in countless interviews discussing his brief time in Pantera, which does not sit well with founding Pantera bassist Rex Brown. The bass player has openly criticized his former bandmate, stating that Pantera was going nowhere with Glaze on vocals. He further expressed his frustration at Glaze's continued attempts to ride the group's coattails. Brown would even dismiss the notion that the band would ever re-release the Glaze-fronted albums. And while fans could easily find these songs through a quick web search, they'll never get to hear any material featuring this next unlucky musician and the iconic band he left behind. Formed in 1985, Guns N' Roses was created through the merger of two Los Angeles-based bands, LA Guns and Hollywood Rose. The original lineup consisted, among others, of frontman Axl Rose and lead guitarist Tracy Guns. However, their collaboration was short-lived, as the two experienced a dramatic falling out just a few months after the band's formation. Their feud began over an argument about a girl who was excluded from their guest list. A trivial disagreement incident that unfortunately led to Tracy's departure from Guns N' Roses before the band had even had the chance to enter the studio. Tracy would recall, "Axl was kind of going through something, because I had never seen him angry. He was really separate from the rest of the band, and was mad that at one of the shows, a friend of ours wasn't on the guest list. It made it really not fun." Tired of clashing with the band's notoriously volatile frontman, Guns made the decision to depart from the group. But he's not the only musician to walk away from a band they helped create, as guitarist Hillel Slovak and drummer Jack Irons would help found California's Red Hot Chili Peppers, only to abandon the group in a bet that didn't pay off. While they were active members of the band What Is This, Slovak and Irons would form the side project Red Hot Chili Peppers in 1982, alongside classmates Flea and Anthony Kiedis. However, in an unexpected turn of events, What Is This was offered a record deal just as the Red Hot Chili Peppers were about to enter the studio to record a demo, putting Slovak and Irons at a crossroads. Ultimately, they made the decision to leave the side project in order to fully commit to What Is This. This turned out to be a poor choice, as What Is This quickly lost momentum and faded away. In the meantime, the Red Hot Chili Peppers went on to sign a deal with EMI and release their self-titled debut album, albeit without the two founding members. But as fate would have it, Slovak and Irons were given a second chance to reunite with the Chili Peppers, as the original lineup got back together for the band's third album, The Uplift Mojo Party Plan. This would be the only album to feature the founding quartet, as the band's subsequent North American tour would see both Slovak as well as frontman Anthony Kiedis develop serious addiction issues. The band's primary concern gravitated towards Kiedis' addiction, which was overt and apparent to the other members. In contrast, Kiedis has described Slovak's addiction as much more subtle. Upon returning home from tour, Slovak fell deeper into the clutches of his addictions, tragically dying in his Hollywood, California apartment in June of 1988 from an apparent overdose. Irons, in particular, was unable to cope with his friend's untimely passing, later choosing to resign from the Red Hot Chili Peppers as he refused to be part of a band where his friends were dying. Irons would later state that Slovak's death had been such a huge shock that he suffered from severe depression ever since. But if you thought you've heard it all, wait until you hear about the last musician on our list, who was fired from not one, but two iconic bands before they made it big. Meet guitarist Jason Everman, who in 1989 joined Nirvana as the band's rhythm guitarist. Everman was all in, even paying for the recording of the band's debut album, Bleach. Though Everman did not play on the LP, he was included in Bleach's credits in hopes it would make him feel more at home in the band. The guitarist, however, would not be allowed any creative input into Nirvana's music, which left him dissatisfied with his position in the group. This only served to make Everman increasingly temperamental as the band embarked on their first ever national tour, leading to repeated clashes with his bandmates that would ultimately lead to his firing. Not long after that, Everman was recruited by the up-and-coming Soundgarden, only to be fired following their first tour together. He later left the music industry behind and enlisted in the United States Army, serving tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, still feeling a call to play music, Everman would go on to form the military veteran band Silence and Light, dedicating the group's profits towards helping members of the special operations community, the military, and first responders.